Good morning, everybody. And how wonderful to be in one room together. I mean, this was what the Khartoum process is about. This is what I was hoping for when on March last year we had our summit in The Hague. The theme of return and reintegration is one essential element of any well-functioning migration system. Not the only element. It has to be seen in context with all the others. And if returns take place, they have to take place swift, in a decent and dignified manner, which always involves the three elements: the actual return, the readmission, and the integration afterwards, and the way you can support that. This is a crucial theme because without that, we will never get to really functioning migration systems as aimed in the Global Compact and in the Valletta Agreement.
These are also very sensitive issues because to take the decision to leave your country is a heavy decision. To turn this decision around and go back is even harder and more complex process and decision. So let me point out just three things. First, let's never forget that migration is a very basic and a very normal human behavior. Second, let's also be aware that migration can cause severe tensions within societies, between countries, and even between continents. Therefore, that's my third and probably my main point. There can only be one answer to the challenges of migration, and that's international cooperation. That's exactly what the Khartoum process is all about. That's what we are here for today.
Together with my colleagues, whom most of you know, we are happy and proud to support the activities of the Khartoum process. And in this regard, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Barbara Zalker, who is the coordinator of the Khartoum process. And she will now provide you with a short summary and recap of the Virtual Roundtable introductory to this thematic meeting that took place also under the auspices of Switzerland and Ethiopia on the 21st of September.
As Monica mentioned, in the lineup or the lead up to this thematic meeting, we decided to have a virtual roundtable focusing on the three topics: return, reintegration, and integration, which are interconnected and correlated, and of course needed also a little bit of an introduction because it's three very broad topics, and in 2 days of thematic meetings it's very difficult to really go into detail of all of three topics. Hence, we organized this virtual roundtable on the 21st of September, where we kind of set the scene on the three topics. We had very good presenters touching more on, let's say, the policy and more of the framework setting of the three topics in order now to have this in-person meeting to dive deeper into the three topics. Without further ado, I think the main outcomes there was actually that the cooperation between the countries of both origin, transit and destination in terms of successful reintegration is key. Also, monitoring and evaluation programs are definitely needed, and also linking development programs to reintegration programs was also outlined. But I think these topics and actually the questions that were raised in this virtual roundtable will be then further discussed in the breakout sessions this afternoon.
The subject of today's meeting is very important for the policy and national policy development, very important for the countries in the region who have a large number of refugees or who also have welcome people in their own countries, and obviously very important for people themselves that are welcomed and they have environment where they can move and stay and be integrated or reintegrated, and they have some support in the place where they go to.
For us it was important to choose a topic that is of high relevance for all Khartoum member states and that also offers an opportunity to strengthen and expand the cooperation between countries but also between national actors in a whole of government approach. And furthermore, we decided to address the interrelated topics of return, reintegration and integration around the concept of durable solutions. And the aim would be to explore how these topics, return, reintegration, integration, can lead to durable solutions for individuals.
Countries implementing return programs and increasingly developing interdepartmental coordination mechanisms reflecting the complex relationship between the various sectors involved in coordinating, counseling, and support from pre to post-return stages. In this regard, I would like to stress that successful coordination depends on two factors. One is strong commitment at the political level, coupled with concrete working level mechanisms such as joint committees and regular working groups. Secondly, with the inception of the return process, the reintegration has been given attention by the countries of origin and transit. This is because return and reintegration of migrants who are unable to or unwilling to remain in the host countries should be accomplished in human and dignified way.
Although we speak of solutions for example, of return as a solution, actually the durable solution is the sustainable reintegration or integration. So we really need to think about that and think about how to make destination spaces of inclusion, and this is also what you will be discussing today. In terms of principles, 3 fundamental principles that were mentioned in the introduction. Returns have to be voluntary, so based on free and informed decision-making, really brings to the fore the importance of information and awareness raising. But also people must be assured of their safety, whether it's physical, so being free from persecution, for example, upon return, but also having access to legal documentation, having access to land, and other basic needs. So it really is multidimensional. And finally, people must be treated with dignity and respect and have human rights respected across the process. So both during return and after return.
The AU policy also advocates a tailor-made approaches to the unique circumstances of the individual and community-based approaches, working together to ensure more sustainable reintegration and integration.
Every reintegration program will look a bit different in different countries of origin, and I think this is the important shift here of having putting more emphasis on the country of origin itself and really design a program based on analysis of the unique circumstances of the return environment.
Complementarity, how do you practically ensure that a reintegration program is complementary to development programs and vice versa? It's a very sort of hands-on, down-to-earth problem, but complementarity is very difficult to achieve given different programming cycles, different reporting formats. Communities and families must be included in reintegration work. Importance of having specific agreement on how to collaborate, avoid changing existing programmatic arrangements, and stay operational, not to stray into policy. So this is what we've taken forward.
The main challenges for the return of migrants, these are people who had other dreams. So even if they agree to return, it's often the failure of their dream. And the reintegration of these people is not easy. On how sustainable it is, how do you measure that, is quite complicated. Whereas for refugees, normally they did not choose to be displaced. They had to for their lives. So return is in general more easy, even if the conditions in the country of origin are not always perfect.
Our project component includes the individual assistance, include economic support, social and psychosocial assistances. Specific to the economic dimension, it covers aspects of reintegration that contribute to re-entering the economic life and sustained livelihood. Specific to the social and psychosocial dimensions, these address returnees migrant access to basic services and infrastructure in Ethiopia, including access to health, education, housing, justice and social protection schemes.
We need to start thinking about our partners. We need to involve within, whether we're talking about the center itself or other similar projects or initiatives for the 3 Rs. National partners, not just NGOs and government institutions. We need to involve the private sector, we need to involve universities and schools, because they are actually the ones who need to tap into the requirements of the labor market abroad so that they can provide the skills for the youth or the potential migrants to have the kind of skill they need once they travel.
I think some of the best practices are those where objectives are clear and objectives are realistic, because many of the contexts are very different. Countries of origin are sometimes fragile economically or politically, so I don't think we should set too high objectives, but objectives that are adapted to the environment in terms of reintegration. But learning from partners, learning from the collaborative approach between local authorities, national authorities, international organizations, NGOs is very helpful.
Refugee integration approaches in Uganda, and we look at integration most like in a simple way as a peaceful coexistence. We feel that when the two communities are living peacefully, that in a way is integration, or some level of integration is achieved.
Social mixing, I think, is often strongly associated in many integration frameworks with this kind of notion of active participation or membership. So setting the bar a little bit higher than just self-sufficiency. I mean, there's a strong social dimension, obviously, but also becoming then and being recognized actually an active member of the new community where you arrive. I think one area that we should look at when we think about opportunities of socializing, mixing, that this is not unequally distributed, and we would really need to see through appropriate assessment which groups are particularly at risk of becoming segregated, and that's often the intervention point.
They have a right to employment and establish businesses. They have access to public services such as health and education, and they have access to documentation like travel, identity, and we think these are all very central if we are to make integration of the refugees more meaningful. The right to documentation, to legal status is very central.
Sometimes the situation of refugees, IDPs, becomes better than that of nearby local communities because of the assistance provided to them. This also can sometimes cause frictions. Therefore, both the government and aid organizations should be mindful of this and strive to provide support in a conflict-sensitive manner.
And of course, I always mention, especially when I'm invited to events, that when we want to shape or create policies, we need to involve refugees and migrants, to have a different perspective, to look also from the other side. Those people who went into these experiences, who struggled, and then if we put ourselves in their situation, we can make better solutions for the future.
This kind of dialogue is very important, first of all, to create synergy among partners, to bring together and to learn from one another. This is very important as we are partners to work together and to have a common understanding on what we are working, on what we are thinking as well. So the theoretical and conceptual framework of integration, reintegration and return is very important to have a common understanding and to have an understanding of challenges on the host country and source country as well.
I would come back to the aforementioned EU strategy on voluntary return and reintegration, which we see as an important milestone in the development of a coherent, partner and development-oriented approach to return and reintegration. We should use this instrument together with the dialogue processes continent to continent, Khartoum and Rabat, and the new Team Europe approach to work together on concrete projects that take the whole migration cycle into view and provide comprehensive support for sustainable employment, including for the sustainable reintegration of returnees.
My key recommendation for policymakers is to take very seriously the operational challenges that are experienced by the implementers of the policies concerning reintegration and concerning development. We have very good policy tools. We have the GCM, we have the IOM handbook on reintegration, we have IASC framework on durable solutions, but policymakers need to know that we have operational challenges in terms of funding mechanisms, in terms of programming practices, in terms of access to individuals, and in terms of linking pre-departure to return, to post-arrival and reintegration and further development linkages.
Return and reintegration is one essential element of every successful migration policy. If you want to control irregular migration and ensure that migration can take place in a legal and orderly fashion, return has to be part of the picture. And it can never be standalone. It all has to be part of a bigger picture. Successful return cooperation has to be part of much broader migration cooperation, and this much broader migration cooperation has to be part of good, broad political relations, political, economic, between different countries and regions.
Migration at the moment, especially the subject and the topic that is discussed here, the return and reintegration and integration, is quite a difficult topic, which is a challenge for governments on how to deal with irregular migration. So that is one of the challenge, but also the challenge is to be able to monitor the irregular migration routes and to support the returnees from the country of destination to the country of origin, those who have agreed to return back to their countries.
I believe that the key message is we cannot do it alone. Countries of origin and countries of destination cannot work alone. We need to do it together. And the center that I talked about, the Egyptian-German Center for Jobs, Migration and Reintegration, is the example, a very clear example of that. We can do it together, but no one can do it alone.
I think policymakers need not to look at refugees as a burden, but to look at refugees as a people who need help and assistance, and who need to have them incorporated in their national plans, so that no one is left behind, as the new way of working is at the Global Compact for Refugees. And that way, we would be also calling upon the international community to take their part of the bargain in terms of national or international cooperation and responsibility and burden sharing.
I just want to give some key words rapidly about these 2 days. This is credibility, this is dignity, this is protection, solidarity, and creativity.
Thank you very much, and I wish you a safe journey back home.